Good morning, everyone. Why don't we do a quick round of introductions, especially because most of you have no idea who I am. I am David DeGeer. I am the new director of the Professional Services Division. I am a fourth grade teacher and middle school principal at heart, but I have also been a director of instruction and worked the last 8 years at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. So I am going to pick someone to hand it off to, and if we could just kind of continue that way. So Commissioner de la Torre Escobedo, sorry about that.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marisol de la Torre Escobedo, and currently I'm teaching 11th grade U.S. History and AP U.S. History, and also a Methods of Teaching class at California State University, Chico.
And if you could pass on to someone else.
Commissioner Wall, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew, and I'm a faculty member at the University of Redlands. I'm going to go with similar. I'm currently teaching 2 classes on leadership and about to teach a class on research methods, and doing studies on educational institution responses to COVID and the dual, or we talk about COVID and systemic racism. And so we've been talking and doing case study, a big set of case studies on how institutions are responding to both COVID and systemic racism across the United States. Actually, where we've done case studies in 3 states so far this spring. Really interesting. There you go.
And then if you could pass it on to the next person.
I'm going to pass it on to Johanna Hartwig.
Hi, everyone. I'm Johanna Hartwig. I'm one of the public members of the commission and just was reappointed, which I'm very pleased about. I live in San Francisco. I'm an attorney and a career planning professional who's always been very interested in education. I'm very excited to meet the new commissioners. Welcome.
Who would you like to pass it on to?
Oh, right. Sorry. Let's see. Mr. Horwitz, how about you?
Thank you, Johanna. I'm Sasha Horwitz. I'm with the Office of Governmental Relations at the Commission. I'll be your note taker today. And I'm going to tag it to my old friend, Monica Martinez.
Thanks, Sasha. Yeah, I'm Monica, and I am appointed as a public member of the Commission. And but I also now work at the Learning Policy Institute. I guess it's been almost 2 years. And Learning Policy Institute, I work a lot with our performance assessment work. And of course, I think many of you are aware that we have a strong research and programmatic work around educator quality, anything from the supply to recruitment, retention, professional learning, evaluation, and career development. So exciting to have that context to bring to this work. And I will pass it to, if we're doing C staff, Gil, you're on my screen.
Hi, good morning. I'm Gil Gonzalez. I'm the director of the Division of Professional Practices, and we handle the discipline area of the commission.
And if you could pass it on to someone else.
I'm not sure. I just got in here. I'm not sure who's next.
How about Commissioner Rodriguez?
Yeah.
Did you say former Commissioner Rodriguez?
Former Commissioner.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aida Rodriguez, and I'm a former commissioner and currently here as liaison as a state board member, and excited to be here in the, in this process. I'm a high school teacher. I teach in El Centro, California, and we just went back in person yesterday with small, stable groups, and it was just. It's exactly what my soul needed, it just to be with the students. And so anyway, that is who I am. And Kathy, is everybody in the group going to be introducing themselves? Is that the?
Yeah, we thought we'd do a quick round, and I apologize for the train going by.
All right, Kathy, have you?
Oh, you're muted. Sorry. Hi, I'm Kathy Proper with El Dorado County Office of Ed Credentials Analyst. I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to be in this meeting. I saw my group was logging on, and so I logged on. So we'll see.
How about Commissioner Cardenas?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Cardenas. I'm one of the new commissioners that's coming on. Excited to be here. I felt like it was the first day of school for me, really excited and really nervous at the same time, but I'm just really happy to be here. I'm with Stockton Unified as a program specialist, school counselor, special assignment, and I've been at the high school level for many years, but I've been at every level: elementary, high school, middle school, college level. I always wondered why my life took that path, and I can kind of see why now, and it's really just exciting to, again, be here and really represent our students, our parents, and our families in our community. So thank you. And I will pass it on. I think that's almost everybody, unless we're going to do
Cheryl. I think Cheryl. Let's see.
Cheryl.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Hickey. I am an administrator in the Professional Services Division at the Commission. Nice to be here with everybody. I do accreditation, program approval, institutional approval, and policy across the board. So happy to be here. And I think Mary, I think we've gotten all the commissioners. We've got Mary and a couple of public members, it looks like, or public members of the public. Mary, I'm tossing it to you. Looks like you might be last. Oh, why can't we hear you, Mary? It does not look like you are muted. All
right. Yeah,
Technical
we're on a
issues.
limited time, so we'll keep going. So we're going to be looking at the vision and mission of the commission. So let me share that for everyone to take a look at again. Are you seeing it or no? Yep, okay. So the questions that we want to address are: how well do the current mission, vision, and values reflect the Commission's perspective on the agency's role and work? And then what, if anything, is missing? And please feel free to unmute yourself and share your thoughts. My colleagues at the Commission, or staff members, will be taking notes, so feel free to jump in with your thoughts.
And Sasha, you are taking notes this time, correct?
I am. I'm going to, I can't share my
Can you
screen
hear me
without
now,
turning.
David?
Yes, Mary, we can hear you.
I will be taking notes. I'd be happy to share my screen. So let's move forward.
Mary, we can now hear Mary, so that's great.
Do you want us to be using the raise hand function, or should we just be jumping in?
Just jump in.
Okay. Well, I was just going to start with, let's see, now I'm trying to, oh, can we get back the vision? Well, I was wondering if there might be a way to include within the vision our desire to have a representative workforce. I love the well-prepared and exceptionally qualified teachers, but I think a goal that has been coming to the fore and that we really want to emphasize is a workforce that represents our amazing state. So I wonder if there's some way that we can include that in the vision, which is our, as I think Mary said, our North Star.
So as you're talking about reflecting our state, are you especially talking about reflecting our student body? Okay.
Yes.
Our TK-12 students, okay.
I think that would be, yes, reflecting our student body. Which also reflects, yeah, which does reflect.
Right, yep.
But yes, our student body.
This is Andrew. I agree with that. I think that would be excellent in the vision. And as I was looking at the mission statement, I felt the same thing: integrity, relevance, high quality. But I wonder about specifically calling out the cultural preparedness of folks. Given that's such an important, of course, I would say it's integrated into high quality, but I wonder in the moment of calling that out specifically. So sort of on the same line.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to, I know as we're developing our workforce, we want them to be, exceptionally qualified. But I think part of that qualification is also, having very caring and compassionate adults. Like, how do we infuse that? Because we're living that right now. And that's something that we have to always be on the forefront, because we want our students to feel that connection, that student connection. And the other part that, as we talk about, equity, I'm always thinking about, just the word inspired, but are we really looking to have our students be empowered, our teachers to be empowered, as far as, the work that they do, but also who they are. So that really ties back into that cultural preparedness as well within our students and our faculty and our staff.
Anyone else have thoughts about how well these the mission and the vision reflect the commission's perspective on the agency's role and work? I think we've learned a lot over the past year that education is not meeting the needs of all students. I think you guys have brought out some of those ideas, but especially looking forward to whatever is post-COVID, what do we need to be thinking about?
So I'm not sure. I'm still thinking about the word choice here. But in the vision where it says, students are inspired and prepared to achieve their highest potential, I'm thinking we need to be a little more specific on the highest potential and what do we include in that, in terms of students' social and emotional health, their academic potential. I'm just thinking of that just in terms of what that captures and what it should capture. I think it needs to be expanded, but I'm kind of thinking of what that could be or what that looks like.
Yeah, this is the opportunity to explicitly call out things that may be implicit, or that we think are part of the mission, but given what we've gone through, we really need to be more explicit about. So thank you.
I'm not sure exactly where this would go. This may be part of another discussion, but it's been on my mind a lot for the last several years about how we empower students through education to become participatory and well-informed citizens, so that when they come out of their K-12 schooling, they are interested in and ready to make informed decisions about government at all levels. So I'm not exactly sure where that might fit into the vision, mission, or some of our other objectives and goals. But in a broad reading of reaching their highest potential, that's part of what I would think actually is helping students be prepared, feel like they can be a participant, a strong participant, active participant in our broader society, and feeling prepared to do that. So again, I'm not sure exactly where it's going to fit in the whole strategic plan, but it is something that particularly in the last couple of years with the spread of misinformation and with the efforts to quash folks' ability to effectively participate in our government, it's on my mind.
I just wanted to add to that as well, is like, I know goal of education is, really for our students to reach their highest potential and to be lifelong learners. But I think for a lot of us, we really want our students, to be community ready, active community members. And that's where we really want, as a commission, to not only portray it, but to have those actionable items to, again, back to the whole empowering our students and empowering our teachers, is really to be those active community members.
I wonder also about, and I'm asking this to all of you, about the empowering students, the role of creativity and innovation as well, because if COVID has taught us anything, it's, we can rethink everything, so.
I think that's a great point, and just a related point that made me think about this last year is how we foster resilience in students. I mean, this last year has been horrendous on so many levels for educators, teachers, students, others. But to be realistic, when we think about the fires in our states over the last number of years, the climate crisis, I hate to say it, but there are going to be a lot of very major challenges that I think our schools are going to face in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And so, something like the pandemic or something that has that kind of an impact on the academic and mental health of students and teachers is not that unrealistic that something is going to come up again. So again, I'm not exactly sure where we put that in, but that does go along with the with empowering students. But I think really being able to cultivate strength, resilience, and flexibility in the face of crises is important any way that we can help teachers learn how to do that.
And towards that, the mission talks about preparation, certification, discipline, these three interlocking, the visual, I have a visual pulled up from the three interlocking circles. I wonder about thought and proactive leadership, because I think a lot of what has happened and what is required in the moment is to do those three things. You have to be thinking about the context and what's coming, and it's ever evolving. And so I'm not trying to recreate a visual, but I think there's something there about, if you just think of it as preparation, certification, and discipline, you can be a reactive agency. And I think if you want to be strategic, you need to be a proactive, right? And so I wonder how you could think about that in that part of the mission, even in the visual. Is there something that would indicate that I think that the commission has really tried to be a proactive partner with many across the state in how we meet these needs going forward.
I would second that, and I feel like in our December session, or whenever our first session, that was a theme that came up multiple times, was looking to the commission as a thought leader and as innovative, and taking ownership of that role, and presenting that as part of our public profile and persona. So I really agree with you on that, Andrew, because I think it's natural that folks would look to this commission for thought leadership in this way, and innovation.
Along with that, it really resonated when you said evolve, right? We are constantly evolving as a profession in education, and as a commission, with things that have happened, we've had to be flexible and adaptable and evolve. And that's just something that I think it has to be noted, that as times change or situations come up, we will continue to evolve to enhance the profession and enhance experiences for our students.
I want to add a personal anecdote to this. Just Commissioner Wong, Commissioner Hartwig, just what you were mentioning in terms of empowering students and this resilience. In Butte County, we had the issue with the Oroville Dam. Then the following year, we had the Camp Fire. And then we had the pandemic. And our students this year, now that we're back in person, have told us, we need a space to talk about this. We need to stop. And they really, want the space and adults to listen. help them, with, just deal with everything that's been happening. So that ties, very, just deeply into, fostering this resilience as we move forward. So I just wanted to bring that to the table as we're living it.
And as I think about what you're saying, it's even first of all recognize the trauma that the various forms of trauma that our students have gone through and are continuing to go through. We've got about 7 more minutes, so we've got time. My wait time.
Another dimension to think about is it's layered in here. I'm just calling things out as I sort of read through this, is how the commission partners. And the commission has a set of legal tasks, which have been called out, specifically. But I also think there's this way that we have gone about partnering with entities to do the work. And so I wonder about, I don't know that it should be included, but, this is brainstorming. We get to talk about things. So, how we go about partnering with the, with the state board, with the external entities. I mean, it's such an important part of the work in order to make these things happen. So it's another aspect that's not explicitly called out. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it could be.
So are there past experiences or things you've noticed about the way the commission has either partnered well or missed opportunities to partner? No, it's an acceptable answer. Nothing comes to mind.
Well, I think mostly well, but I think there's, there are always issues that people are going to, disagree on. There's no question about that. But I think there's extensive effort to reach out to, I'll just give the example from yesterday, even appointing the COA when we were interviewing for COA members, and the effort to try to have think about representation in multiple ways. I think that the intentionality of thinking about that representation and then the same thing when it comes to, well, there's an issue, and so how do we reach out and how do we appropriately not only seek input but potentially partner. It's in the DNA, I think, of how the organization thinks about its functioning.
I think that's a great point, Andrew. And I don't know if we might be able to include it in the mission or if it's could go somewhere else in the goals and so on. But, from my observation, we partner both sort of formally, with the state board or with particular entities, but then there is this constant reaching out to draw on the resources of the broader education community through the many, many, many task forces that are ongoing, as well as the set committees. So there is this constant mutually supportive, beneficial relationship that we have through practitioners, through higher ed, professors, et cetera, that really does support and drive forward the work done by our staff, and then, overseen and guided by the commissioners. So, we would not be able to do the work that we do without so much constant input in so many different ways from members of the field. I think that's a really good point, Andrew. And I think it would be great to recognize that in some way, the importance of that to our work being effective.
So before we get the 1 minute warning, we do need one of the commissioners in our group to volunteer to share 2 or 3 ideas that we came up with when we go back to the larger group. So do we have a volunteer?
I know you guys aren't shy.
Jose, can we volunteer you as our new member since you've been participatory? You can say no.
I was hoping that wouldn't happen on my first day.
You can decline for sure.
If I could respectfully decline for right now, I would appreciate that.
Okay, in that case, I think by my taking that action, then I have volunteered myself. I will offer a few ideas.
Thank you.
Okay, we still have 2 or 3 minutes. So is there anything else that you would like to say about the mission, vision, and values?
I think one of the things that stood out to me, just from watching one of the previous meetings, was that the whole educator quality and examinations assessment keeps coming up, right? Especially right now during COVID, and how can, teachers people who are trying to become teachers, take these exams, but it keeps coming up. And I know it's a mandate, but is there another way, they keep talking about multiple measures, another way to measure educator quality? So it is something that it's been on my mind, and I know it's been on my mind even from a practitioner's point of view, where they've taken out a lot of assessments for students and done multiple measures.
We'll get into that on Friday.
Yep.
I think about how that is something that we've been doing in TK-12 education for a while now. Other practices that you can think of that need to be moved from TK-12 to our preparation?
I think in TK-12, we're always talking about, especially with CTE, experiential learning. And I know that's an aspect of the educator programs, is to have experiential learning, but is there enough, right? Is there enough time? Is there enough opportunity to have those experiential learning? And for me, I know going through my prep program, I always felt like it wasn't enough. And I hear that from a lot of students, they wish they had more time to do that. But then, they're juggling multiple jobs themselves and families. So it is something to think about.
I'd like to, is it okay if I speak? Yes. All right. So thank you for the robust conversation. I really appreciate everything that's been said, the caring and compassionate adults. And as I'm listening to you speak, I'm thinking about the soft skills that, we really, we mention them. We don't really measure them. And I think that the soft skills like resourcefulness and communication and so many others would have gotten us through this difficult time. Listening to Commissioner Hartwig talk about, the future, right? And how important it is really to have those soft skills as educators and as students and in our school communities. And so communication keeps coming up, because I think about when we empower people, we communicate, and it's both ways, because we listen as well. We really listen to where people are, and the communication is equity, because I know I've been in situations where somebody's saying something that I'm included in, but they don't tell me, and later I'm like, what? So just that communication with our stakeholders, that I think in the time that in the last 6 years, I've seen the CTC really build a strong communication network. And it could be stronger, right? Because we can always improve on that. So that, as I was listening to everyone, I kept thinking about communication, and then Commissioner Wall bringing up the State Board of Education and how we can have a stronger partnership, right, with the CDE. And we've always had somebody at the table representing the superintendent of schools. But we can be a little bit more deliberate in our partnerships on how we're working together to make sure that we're aligned. And so, you know, anything that I can take back and we can talk about. And then there's the teacher accountability, right, which is one of the prongs that really isn't in the local control funding formula. And I'm not talking about teacher accountability as in measuring teachers, but how are schools, how are our systems supporting teacher growth? Thank you, Luna. Okay, I will mute. I'm looking for my mute button here.
Okay, it's always fun to have coworkers.
Yes, no, and she's very good, and she's all about communication.
She agrees with the teacher accountability piece.
Yes, right. And it would be that prong, like what are we doing at our school levels to make sure that teachers, that the steps that we've created with the TPAs and the TPEs, how are they being followed up at the school level? Right, which may be like a little bit of a missing piece there.
And they have added time here and there, so I'm not sure exactly when we're going to be. Oh, here we go.
That's us.
It's time to go back. So thank you, everyone. We'll be going back to the large group now, and then we'll be coming back into this breakout group in a little bit to look at some other questions. So thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thank you.
You.
All right, so the idea is that we are going to take some time in the beginning to look through the goals and that appendix, that updated attachment B that also looks at goals. And again, since we have not had a break yet, my suggestion is that we agree to come back so don't leave the Zoom meeting. As James said, don't leave the Zoom meeting. But if you want to turn your camera and or video off while you take a break or read, please feel free to do that. But we'll come back. It's now 10:26. So how about 10:35? We'll come back and start our discussion.
So in that time, take a break and also review some of the documents.
Sounds good.
David, can you repeat the three things we need to be looking at here? So the multi-year goals, which starts on page 3, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I can put it up on the screen.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sure. So strategic plan, appendix B, and then the 2021 initiatives and milestones.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I believe the milestones is within the same appendix, with appendix B in the insert.
Okay. You're right. Yeah, especially the revised one.
I just wanted to ask where the revised one was located.
Should be in your email.
If it's not in your email, it's on the commission's website for this agenda item. So if you go to the commission, ctc.ca.gov, and then go to the meetings, there is item, 2A?
I'll try and put that in the chat.
Oh, good
Item
idea.
2A
I always
insert,
forget about
correct?
that.
Yes.
What's that?
Item 2A insert, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
I have that one. Perfect. Thank you.
So as people are coming back, please turn on your cameras again so we know when everyone is here. I dropped a link in the chat that goes directly to let me see if I can share it. The strategic plan. So this is linked in the chat, and this is where we have the initiatives and milestones. And then looking at for each goal area, different parts of that goal area, whether it's statutorily required, what work is being done. And as someone coming with fresh eyes, one thing I will say is that there's a lot here. So this is your opportunity as commissioners to say, these are all important, but this is the one that I really want to see get done, or these are the 3 to 5 that really we have to do. So I would suggest that that might be someplace you want to focus on.
And just to clarify that this section you're on right now is as a result of the survey work that was done with the stakeholders.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Mm-hmm. And I can share my screen to start taking notes, or is it more helpful to have David share the screen on the goals? In this, there's a lot here going on. Okay, then I will
go back to the question that we're supposed to, or the questions we're supposed to be looking at.
Okay.
So what needs to be updated or added to the goals, and what are the most pressing long-term priorities the Commission would like to address within the next 3 to 5 years?
I can share my screen with the notes as we talk.
So, David and Cheryl, I have a question about the chart itself, real quickly. In terms of the second column, the within statutory mandate, so if we look at, say, for example, 1D, where it says outside mandate, so it's not in our purview necessarily, so it shouldn't go at the top of our list. I'm just trying to think on how to organize my thoughts on this.
That's a great question, and I struggled with that one for a couple weeks. It means that we're not required by statute to do that. So there's no statutory requirement to have a teacher leader certification. However, the Commission may decide that, you know what, this is, having teacher leader certification and really having a set process and recognizing teacher leaders is an important way to meet our bigger goals.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification.
All right. So again, can you all see that now? The note-taking document? No? Okay, great. I see Sasha saying yes.
I can see it.
Okay, great.
Yes, Cheryl.
Okay. So updated or added and pressing long-term priorities, 3 to 5 years.
Cheryl, are you taking notes this time? I was planning to, but I.
Oh, you can take notes.
Okay.
I thought group 1 you were in, group 2
I thought I got both, and so I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead. Then I will unshare.
All right.
If I have to remember how to do this. Where's my unshare?
Right, hopefully you see
Is that you now, Sasha?
That's me. It's a little larger.
All right. Great. Yeah, ready to roll.
And we understand that there's a lot for you to look through at this point, so feel free to take your time. You don't have to go in any kind of order. As you see something, feel free to speak up. You don't need to raise your hand. And my wait time during COVID has really gotten long, so don't worry about it.
I can tell you what I think I've heard you all say over the last, I don't know, 6 months is on that diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is in fact one of your primary objectives. I think I've heard that loud and clear. I don't know if anybody wants to elaborate on that.
I think that's a great place to start. I think it shows up in specific areas in the documents that we're reviewing. I wish I had names for each of them. GS2A insert, I guess, is what I'm looking at the moment, because I think it shows up in recruitment and retention, and I think that's exceptionally important. I also think it shows up prominently in testing and in removing barriers. And so I think that there are these places where that is an overarching theme that's very important, show up in very practical implementation elements. I personally think the barriers has been pointed out extensively, and I think that's really important in terms of testing and making sure that what we're doing is creating an environment where we have high quality, but we also don't create barriers that keep people out. So I think that those are really important areas.
Seems like it's definitely updated or added in terms of needing to be enhanced, and then it's definitely a priority within the next 3 to 5 years, I think. So it falls in both categories. What other thoughts do you guys have?
I think that there's an issue here that is brought up about specifically shortages in special education teachers. I think just in general, shortages of teachers, regardless of what credential they may hold. They can be multiple subject, single subject, B-clad. It's just a shortage of teachers overall. I think that's going to be, impactful for the next, years to come, with people retiring early or, people trying to come into the profession, but there's, like we talked about, those barriers that exist.
It's definitely important. We did just recently see new data on potential retirements, and they're a little frightening.
Even just the historical ones up through 2019, 2020 were a little alarming.
So along with that, with retention, and also with people leaving the profession or coming into the profession, you start looking really into quality and accountability. I think it's goal area 2. How do you maintain, like we talked about, high quality still, of not just bringing people in who may not be credentialed or don't have the credentialing for that specific subject. I know just in my own case, I've seen teachers be in classrooms when that 30-day maybe runs up and then they have to bring somebody else. So that constant turnover for our students.
So given some of the things that you guys brought up in our first breakout session, do you feel like high quality is clearly defined, or has high quality or what we need from our teachers changed? One of the things I'm thinking is social and emotional learning. Do we really include that in our high quality definition?
I think when we talk about goals, that for me has always been first and foremost has been social emotional learning, but even more so now. I think in the last group on our debrief, somebody brought up, I saw it in their notes, about restorative returns, for our educators, but also for our students. So then how do we infuse that into our programs? Because SEL and that self-care, it's not infused into a lot of teacher programs. It's maybe spoken of, but it's not infused as part of the program. It's usually given at the training at the LEAs, but not really an infusion of SEL. Because that's also an expectation when teachers go in. I know in our district, we train our teachers and it's become an expectation where teachers are delivering some of that curriculum. What if there's no background knowledge on how to even deal with some of those situations?
This is a tangentially related, which is, I've been looking at in the educator quality, we focus on facilitate entry of highly talented individuals into the education profession. I mean, that is important to bring in highly talented individuals, but I also wonder if we want to include in here something about the compassionate, committed, dedicated individuals that we're interested in attracting into the profession as well. Whether, whether simply calling out facilitating entry of highly talented individuals doesn't necessarily capture the whole picture of the type of people we're hoping enter the teaching profession. And in some people's minds might more translate to, well, what does that mean academically, elite? What does that mean exactly? Well, just a thought about maybe trying to capture some of the things that have been expressed about how we want our educators to approach, their service reflected in the types of people that we're looking for.
A couple of things that you guys have just said has made me think about not only teaching, but all the support services around students. So all the pupil personnel services, the counselors, the social workers, and the psychologists, and the really imperative around that right now.
I think that's a really good point, Cheryl, and I haven't figured out how to identify that, but I do think as a global comment, I think that would be very helpful for us to go through all of the goals and make sure that, if you're reading these as a school counselor or some other role, then they speak to you and support your work as well, and what we want from those professionals.
As I'm looking at this, just there's so many of them have, connect, like, oh, this connects with this connects with that. So I'm trying to think of a way of organizing this. Commissioner Cardenas, you mentioned how social emotional learning needs to be infused. I like that word. But also, diversity, equity, and inclusion needs to be infused throughout so many of these goals. So if we look at social emotional learning, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm just thinking of, just in terms of what needs to be added, how, we have these big overarching terms here. But in addition to that, Cheryl, you mentioned, the preparation and the different roles. I was also thinking just in terms of retention, and especially with, the pandemic, I think that needs to be at the top of our list. In terms of, let's see, goal area 1, recruitment, 1C, developing, a teacher mentoring program. Not only just the preparation, but also how to support and keep teachers in the profession. I think our radar needs to be on there more so than it ever has been.
Commissioner De La Torre, I agree with what you're saying with the retention of teachers, and I also look at it just also from like an educator standpoint, like administrators. I see our administrators really being burnt out. I see like we were talking about our support staff, like there's bits of mentoring, or there's bits of for teachers, but there's no constant development for other educators that need it as well in the profession.
So what might that look like? What kinds of professional development are you thinking about?
So are you thinking beyond, so we have induction for both teachers and administrators. Are you thinking beyond that second year of practice?
I know I was. I know that one of the comments here had said maybe extending it to 3 years. But yeah, extending it. So, you go through the induction maybe for the first 2 years, and then there's still another element to that because the burnout phase happens at about year 5, right? That's where teachers, we really start to lose it. So that ongoing connection with a mentor teacher or with, someone in the profession that can continue to help them through what they're experiencing. And again, especially even in a time like now, we're experiencing so much. Who do they go to? Who do we ask? Who do we have those questions to? And not everybody has that connection with someone.
Right. And that certainly goes to Marisol's comment about attention.
Commissioner Wall, do you feel like you are able to have a connection with your program completers once they leave, or are you feeling like, as being at a preparation program, you got the next group in front of you and you really got to focus on them, that it's hard to be that additional mentor or connection for your completers?
It's a great question. I've operated in different state contexts, and I have a little bit of a feeling that I don't have the connection post-graduation from a systemic view that I had in some other state contexts, right? Where there was a formal induction program and the universities participated in that. And I think there's a whole history right here in California related to that. And funding, the universities would talk about in terms of funding formula and the move to local control. But I think it's an important issue. But this all, to me, the conversation, I think, and I see it reflected in all of the goals, is how do we examine the tensions between the desire to have access simultaneously and to increase the production of highly qualified teachers, simultaneously as acting as an entity that is supposed to help to ensure high quality, right? That I'd like to say that those never come in tension. I really would. I'd like to believe that, you can do that. But I think that practically, when the rubber hits the road, there are tensions that you're describing between, what happens on the ground with the program and wanting to enroll students and the incentives that institutions have to enroll students, and then the need to make sure that every student is really well prepared. And I think that's going to continue to be one of the tensions that exists. And I think how we navigate that is really important. And we need to do that in culturally sensitive ways. We need to do that in ways that redefine what it means to be prepared. I like the language about social emotional because I think that helps to reframe and redefine what it means. But I think that this is reflected in lots of the objectives, and as it's a theme that I see. You're doing a great job trying to capture my thoughts and notes, by the way, because I did not talk in like note, easy to take note format.
I do think just one thought related to that, Andrew, and I'm not sure exactly where this fits in, maybe under communication and engagement. I do think the importance for the commission of real clarity about our expectations and changes that might be coming down the pipeline for programs or for credential holders is just a very high priority in terms of making sure that we have good relationships with with our programs and then with our credential holders. And so I think there is a lot of great communication now, but I guess I would just, from someone sort of outside of this profession, that's sort of been one of my observations when I do hear from individuals of frustration about trying to figure out what their requirements are, et cetera. I just think as we make changes, being as crystal clear as we possibly can and communicating that through as many different modes as we can is just so important to our reputation and the trustworthiness with which we are held. So that's just a general comment, I guess, for us to really keep front of mind in our communication and engagement section.
That makes a lot of sense, especially given the past year where some requirements have been delayed. And so how do we make that clear for everyone, whether you're a candidate, a recent completer, someone who's thinking about getting into teaching? That's very helpful. Thank you.
That does speak to that goal area 3, like you were saying, communication and engagement. There's one on number 15 where, building those relationships between preparation programs. It's just helping build a bridge, right, between those preparation programs and those LEAs to, again, back to the mentoring and then also the communication, right, that constant communication. Sometimes a lot of things get lost in translation. Something gets communicated to the preparation program and it doesn't get communicated to LEA. But if there's a bridge there, they can have that constant communication that's also coming from the commission.
This is just a small comment, not a large substantive comment. That maybe has a little bit more to wordsmithing than to big ideas. But I would suggest that one of the things we're looking at is we're looking at our multi-year goals, right? Educator quality. So 1A, I would suggest that we use something else besides 21st century teaching and learning there. To me, that makes it sound dated. Actually, we're 20 years into the 21st century. And so when I read that, I'm like, what, are we still thinking about the 20th century? This doesn't, it rings a false note for me. So that's just a small note that I think we should come up with a term that we think expresses what we want, which is the best contemporary practices in teaching and learning. And I'm not the one to come up with words for that. Somebody else who knows it more would, but that's just a small note about changing 1A.
Sasha's good at the wordsmithing, but what I'm thinking is we really need to do a shift in our thinking so that we're no longer using the 20th century as our frame of reference.
Yes.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Yes.
We've got a little more than 10 minutes. I wonder if it's worth, I'm trying to come up to the title card, but there's a second column here. And I want to give people an opportunity to think through that.
Which is the 3 to 5 year out priorities.
Yeah.
what
I'm
needs
having
to be
trouble
in.
finding it, but
It's a long document now.
it is so long. It's only on page 12 of 22.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, that's breakout session 1.
Right.
I do really like what you have all started to talk about communication, because I think, you know, and part of this is colored by an experience that I had with my son recently, trying to get through to the Employment Development Department because he was laid off in November as a result of COVID. And just trying to get through and getting good information has been really impossible. And I don't want to be, I want to be an agency that has really strong customer service. And so, you know, being able to explain things clearly and not in a real technical, bureaucratic manner, those kinds of things. And I know we seek to do that all the time. I don't think we always succeed, but we try. But that gets back to your discussion about communication.
I also just want to articulate one other thing I think that's so important related to our communication with our, you know, many different stakeholders who are so committed to the work of educating our students is the more that we can pursue our good communication and transparency to the level that it's appropriate, the better prepared we are as an agency for if we need to make changes that may be tough for some parts of some different constituencies. You know, I know that, you know, that we sometimes go in a direction or make decisions that aren't popular with everybody, right? But we may think there's a really good reason for them. And we have some long-term goals, like, you know, that I know that may require really good communication and education and dialogue across our stakeholders and with us. And so I just wanted to surface that as how important communication on a continuous basis is if we do need to make major shifts in some, you know, in some direction. So.
Good point. Part of the building goodwill.
Very much so. And yeah, building trust.
We are again going to need a volunteer who is not Commissioner Cardenas.
I did not mean to be unkind on your first day, Commissioner Cardenas.
You're not unkind.
You had so many great ideas, I thought.
By the way, Commissioner Cardenas, welcome. I think you'll really enjoy the fabulous group here at the CTC. And your bio is very impressive, so I'm looking forward to all that you'll contribute, that already have contributed today and will contribute. So
thank you very much. I know I've been watching a lot of commission meetings and I feel like, oh, I know them already, I've seen them before. So thank you for being so welcoming and having me here.
It looks like we have they just sent a thing saying we're going till 11:25.
Yeah.
I think for myself, I would need some more guidance about thinking about, are we supposed to be articulating 3- and 5-year goals? Is that part of what we're supposed to be doing?
It's not necessarily that you have to develop goals themselves, but what are your priorities, or what do you think the priorities for the commission should be looking out 3 to 5 years? And I think as Cheryl summarized before, we've heard from you multiple times, diversity, equity, and inclusion is overall goal that comes across in multiple ways. And self-care and social emotional learning is something that's coming across. So I can see those as being things you've already identified. I don't know if you want to talk more about diversifying our teacher workforce. That was something that has come up before. And certainly the research that we've seen over the past few years is really highlighting that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where to put this in, if this is right. 3 to 5 year milestones or goals, but I do think acting as quickly as we can upon the information that we're getting back from our major grant programs, to, and I think we're already doing this, but not to feel like we have to wait until the whole grant program is finished before we decide that we really need to advocate for an expansion of a particular program. I think we've been seeing such heartening data coming in from multiple different grant programs. And so I think it would be, I think it would be a priority for us, as much as we can do it within our mandate, to really act quickly upon guidance that we get from those grant programs about which ways we should push, how we should use our legislative weight, whether it should be in all of the above, or whether we see something that we really think that we should push on. Anyway, you get the idea, but I see that as a 3-year and a 5-year goal, but to keep that moving along as much as it's within our capacity to keep pushing that. And so some of that, I think, is also, I'm sure, an educating stakeholders, not just in the educational community, but in the political community as well, and the funding, the state level funding community, to really understand that these are significant outcomes that I think that we're starting to see that could really have a positive impact on our pipeline issues.
Can I make just I think it's interesting to go through the which I've been diligently trying to do, these documents, and look at the number of priorities or potential priorities. So I think something we could do is actually, an outcome of this is to reduce that. Really, I mean, I understand this is exactly the activity, but I look through these and I'm like, well, they're all good. Some of them clearly you've identified as mandate, but I get a little overwhelmed in trying to, like, how could we write this in such a way that we're communicating exactly what we're trying to say, and then have some things that are more tasky flow from that, so that we communicate these are our real priorities. And maybe it's just, it's in development, so this isn't a critique of the development process. I'm going to sort of volunteer for the next reporting out. So I've been trying to synthesize some of it in notes, and I think we can reduce some of it down. We have this communication key. We have diversity, equity, inclusion. The self-care, emotional learning component. The pipeline that includes diversifying, but also shortage areas. And then this new one, acting quickly. I sort of, as priorities that I've heard, I don't know that I've really captured them, but I mean, if you got down to more like that number of 6, 7, 8, wow. So that's a process comment.
That's very helpful, because especially as I'm thinking about how, we communicate and partner with other stakeholder groups, if we're sharing with them 30 priorities, they can pick and choose, well, yeah, we'll help with this one, but it doesn't really get across the commission's, what's most important to the commission. So that is helpful for us to think about.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, Andrew and David. And it does seem like in our communications, right, if we can surface, I mean, there are lots of priorities that have to do with ongoing effectiveness of our core things that we need to do, but being able to pull out and communicate things that are more global or thematic, I guess, as we're taking care of all of this other business we always take care of, but right now we're also super focused on A, B, and C as our, as some more global goals that we're focused on, I think would be helpful and inspiring for us and for our stakeholders.
I think that would especially be helpful to initial preparation programs and induction programs for them to understand what the commission really wants to see happen over the next 3 to 5 years.
Is Marisol?
And part of, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just remember Marisol brought up some great points in the previous session about being prepared for traumas that students face. And if she's still on, I just wondered if she would want to elaborate on that, but I'm not sure that she is.
I think her kids just came back from school. At least I saw in the chat that her kids came back from school, so she's going to jump back on in a little bit.
Got it.
I might not capture what Commissioner de la Torre was probably going to say, but just from that standpoint of just trauma and then the re-traumatization of our students. Mm-hmm. So they may experience some trauma at home, but then they come to school and they face some other type of trauma that brings up something that's happened in the past or re-traumatizes them, or even their parents and their families, right? Because they went to the school system as well. And then I think of our educators who also come with trauma, and then something may happen at the school setting, but we may re-trigger that. And so have we really addressed it? And how do we address it? Because we always talk about, well, you just have to do self-care. It's care. People don't really take courses on it, or unless they go, themselves research it, they don't know what self-care looks like. And that's also true for our students. When we're telling them to do self-care, they may not know what that even looks like. And for some people, it might be mindfulness, right? And very calming. And for some people, they need a bigger outlet than that. And we think about like our students who don't have the outlet of sports, right? That need that external outlet, physical outlet. And some of our staff may need a positive, productive physical outlet. And I just think of an example of some of our school counselors, they go around and they do something outside with their teachers because they need to get them out of the classroom. They need to get them away. So it's activities like that, but that needs to be taught, right? It needs to be best practice, evidence-based, data informed. It just cannot just be like, we call it a random acts of kindness, right? It actually has to be something that has evidence-based and it can really have long-lasting effects.
Your points are so well taken. I see a proliferation of students who are doing their dissertations and doing their academic work on trauma. And every time I read them, the construct that I hear is that the individual, we need to help individuals deal with their trauma, which is true. I agree with that, or deal with trauma. But what I keep hearing is school culture. Is what's our culture like? And how do we create cultures of care? I mean, I think we've all been talking about this in different ways, where the ethos is an environment of care and inclusion and engagement, and recognizing the whole person that comes to the environment, right? That people have, they're fully formed when they get to us. They have all these dimensions to them. And then they arrive in the environment, and we have to appreciate that dimension of them as they get there. So to me, I think trauma informed has to be linked to how do we help with create cultures in schools that are that help to people to be successful, right? And so we don't see it as an individual responsibility of either a teacher to help a student, because it's got to be a collective. or a student to help themselves, or a teacher to help themselves dealing with what they're dealing with. There's a support system there. And is that outside the mandate of the commission? Well, I don't know that it isn't or that it is. I think it's about creating a system that that does that.
Well, I would say, and of course I'm the new one, but things can be outside of what's in statute. And I think one of the roles for the commission can be to really be the bully pulpit for what should be happening in preparation and what should be happening in schools, and pulling together partners to make that happen.
And I do think, Andrew, I think these are all wonderful points. And it does seem like the programs themselves can in some ways be models of, leading the way in terms of this. It's obviously not going to be apples to apples in terms of a K-12, culture, but got a lot of impressionable, students who are there with you all, who can take ideas that they've seen work to the school cultures that they go to. And I think there's a lot of empowerment that can be done here, because there'll be tons of ideas from the students, from your students, the higher ed students themselves, about what that might look like. But, that's also something where we might be able to have as the commission might be able to have a closer in, let's just say, in terms of, trying to get the ball rolling for some of the things that you're talking about. Just a thought.
Commissioner Hartwig and Commissioner Wall, going with what you were just saying, since it's a little out of the purview with this, but yet still part of, something that we would have some influence over. And when I say we, I'm, the CTC, is it possible, would this be a place where micro-credentials might fit? I'm just asking, I don't know, but just wanted to put that out there.
That's an interesting idea, also just as an incentive for, folks working in schools to take some extra effort to do something that would be wellness oriented within their schools. That's an interesting idea.
Part of that continuous learning, right? Doing the micro-credentials, just that continuous learning and evolving.
Correct. And what made me think about that is when we were talking about teacher leadership, right? Even though it's not within our purview, but it is that little fuzzy area that Commissioner de la Torre asked about. And a few years back, I worked with a team of California teachers to develop micro-credentials for teacher leadership, because we may have these excellent teachers, but when they're master teachers in a classroom, they need to develop a lot of those skills. And so I was thinking, as you were speaking about, there are a lot of micro-credentials with regard to self-care or teacher leadership. So if it's something that we could encompass, that might be a way to go for deep, further and deeper learning.
I have another thought, which is related to this and some of the other issues that we've talked about, and also related to communication, which is I would like to emphasize and amplify how it is that we're able to share, I'm just going to say, share success stories, share best practices, really get the word out as much as we can through our platforms and through our collaborators about successful programs, et cetera. Just because so many of the different things that we've talked about could be so inspiring to other institutions if they learned that another school was doing something. So it applies to a lot of the different things we're talking about, but I mean, I could think about in terms of a wellness program or something that one school pilots. Might seem like a huge effort until you hear about the school a couple of counties away that did it and they were able to do it successfully. Anyway, that's just sort of an overall comment. And I know that there are ways that we already share best practices and success stories, but I would love to elevate that in some, I would love for us to be able to elevate and amplify that as much as we could, because we are talking about a lot of different innovative things that we would love for folks to start doing. And so the more we can share models of success, but also realistic models of how you can do new things without it diverting you from all the other things that you need to do, I think would be great.
Building, but I was looking specifically at goal 4, operational effectiveness, and in the midst of these big goals, it strikes me that over the next few years, some of the goals related to operational effectiveness can't be lost. And I think about what happened with COVID, and the ability actually to do work remotely and other things was built upon the fact that infrastructure was already present. And I think about the fact that we will continue to need to invest in that operational infrastructure in order to meet the next challenge. And I also think in this discussion I think about the commission staff actually frequently, because there is so much the commission staff are trying to do. And I think something we could do to help the staff is to help to narrow this and focus it. Because I do think long-term about the health and wellness of the staff that are trying to take this big agenda and implement it. And, we can come up with great new ideas. So, I know like goal 4, point 23 is, emphasize health and wellness. And I think in the midst of all of this, we have got to encourage, recently I think I saw that companies were giving financial incentives for people to take vacation. Because there's such it's so frequent in the US that people don't actually take vacations. And so they're literally paying you extra just to take your vacation days. And I can't speak to the commission staff, but I sure hope that, we do all we can in the midst of all these other things, that we invest in the infrastructure and we invest in staff and, in keeping good staff and in making them happy and productive and not just overwhelm them with more demands, actually. Not demands. Our hopes, dreams, and aspirations for kids and the state.
Thank you.
I will say that that's one of my goals for the next couple months. Is I know that the administrators in my division have taken on additional responsibilities after Terry retired, and sounds like they have not always taken time off to take care of themselves. So Cheryl, you and the others are going to have to do that.
There's just one more thing I want to add that Commissioner Wall had stated about school culture. Recently, we received a document from KSOL, and it talked about just the 3 signature practices for classroom teachers. But the part that really stood out to me is just how, it says, with compassion, we can help remove students' triggers by providing smoother transitions and safe, predictable classrooms. And to me, that's the part that we have such an opportunity to engage with our staff, with our students, and to talk about that re-triggering, like really building that campus culture and climate. It's a necessity, right? It's not just something extra. And I hope it doesn't go to the wayside once everybody does return to campuses, that we don't lose like the stuff that we have operationalized. Like I hope we don't lose those important aspects that we've deemed to be important. Because I know we can all get into the really busy and into the run of stuff, and then we forget. I hope this is something that we don't forget.
This has been very productive. Thank you. So again, staff will be taking all of these notes and then bringing them back to you at, I think, the June meeting. And any second now, we're going to be zapped back
Thank
to
you.
large